Let's talk about electricity, not the way it's usually explained, but the way it actually exists beneath everything you see, touch, and experience. You think you understand electricity because you live inside it. It's so common that it feels boring. Lights turn on, phones charge, screens glow, machines move. It feels normal, almost trivial. But that sense of familiarity is an illusion. Electricity is not normal. It is not intuitive. And it is definitely not simple. Right now, as you listen to this, electrons are moving through circuits. Forces are acting across empty space. Fields are rising and collapsing around you. None of this is visible. None of it feels dramatic. But it is happening everywhere, all the time, and it is holding your entire world together. Ask yourself a simple question. What actually happens when you flip a light switch? Most people imagine something like water flowing through a pipe. You turn the switch, electricity flows, the bulb lights up. It sounds reasonable. It feels mechanical, cause and effect. Push a button, get light. But that picture is wrong in almost every important way. Electrons do not rush from the power plant into your house at high speed. They do not race down wires like water through a hose. In fact, individual electrons in a household wire drift incredibly slowly, millimeters per second. At that speed, an electron would take minutes, even hours, to travel across a room. And yet the light turns on almost instantly. So what actually moved? The answer is not the electrons themselves. The answer is the force between them. The wire in your wall is already full of electrons. Copper is packed with them. They're already there, everywhere along the wire, long before you touch the switch. When you close the circuit, you don't summon new electrons from far away. You apply a push. That push is an electric field. And electric fields act across space. When you apply voltage at one end of a wire, the electric field rearranges itself through the entire circuit at nearly the speed of light. Each electron nudges the one next to it, not by traveling across the wire, by repelling it, like a compressed spring releasing tension all at once. That invisible reorganization is what delivers energy to your lamp, your phone, your computer. Electricity is not a substance. It is a coordinated movement of force. To understand how strange that really is, you have to forget how you think the physical world works. You are used to contact. You push things by touching them. You feel pressure when objects press against your skin. Your intuition says that forces require contact. That intuition is wrong. Try a simple experiment. Rub a piece of plastic on your clothes. Hold it near your arm. The hairs rise up. They move toward the plastic without touching it. Nothing is pushing them physically. No contact. No mechanical force. What you are seeing is the electromagnetic force reaching across empty space. That same force is responsible for every solid object you have ever touched. When you place your hand on a table, your hand does not actually touch the table. The electrons in your skin repel the electrons on the surface of the table so strongly that they refuse to overlap. It is electromagnetic repulsion. You are not feeling matter. You are feeling fields. This force is so strong that it dominates almost everything in your daily life. Compared to it, gravity is nearly irrelevant at small scales. Between two electrons, the electromagnetic force is astronomically stronger than gravity. So strong that gravity may as well not exist for them, and yet matter does not explode. The reason is balance. Every atom contains positive charges and negative charges in nearly perfect equilibrium. Their immense forces cancel out with extraordinary precision. The repulsions and attractions balance so completely that matter appears stable and neutral. But that stability is fragile. Move a tiny fraction of electrons out of place, and the imbalance becomes noticeable. That is static electricity. That is the crackle when you touch a doorknob. That is lightning scaled up to the size of a storm. Not a different phenomenon. It is the same force you saw with the plastic, released on a massive scale. Electricity is not something humans invented. It is something we discovered and learned to manipulate. Long before wires and generators, electricity existed everywhere. In atoms, in chemistry, in biology, in your nervous system. Every thought you have is the result of electrical signals traveling along neurons. Your brain is not powered by combustion or pressure. It is powered by controlled electrical imbalance. Your muscles contract because electric signals trigger chemical reactions. Your heart beats because electrical waves coordinate its motion. Your senses work because electromagnetic interactions convert light, sound, and touch into signals your brain can interpret. Life itself is electrical. Now consider magnetism. For centuries, electricity and magnetism were thought to be separate. One made sparks, the other made compasses point north. They seemed unrelated. They are not. They are the same thing. A moving electric charge creates a magnetic field. A changing magnetic field creates an electric force. You cannot have one without the other. There are two sides of a single phenomenon, electromagnetism. This unity is what makes modern civilization possible. At a power plant, massive turbines spin. They are driven by steam, falling water, wind, or nuclear heat. The source doesn't matter. What matters is motion. That motion spins coils of wire through magnetic fields. As the magnetic environment changes, electrons in the wire are pushed, not by contact, but by the magnetic field itself. That push creates electric current. No fuel travels down the wire. No energy particles race from the generator to your home. What travels is a pattern, coordinated oscillation of electric and magnetic fields. That pattern moves at nearly the speed of light. The wire is not the carrier of energy in the way a pipe carries water. The energy flows through the space around the wire, guided by the electromagnetic field structure created by the circuit. This is one of the most counterintuitive facts in physics. The wire mainly serves as a boundary condition that shapes the field. The real action happens in the surrounding space. Electricity is not inside the wire. It is in the field around it. That same principle allows transformers to work. Two coils of wire placed near each other, not touching. Current flows in one coil. The changing magnetic field induces current in the other. Energy jumps across empty space. No physical connection, just fields. This is not metaphorical. It is literal. Metal communicates with metal through space. Motors work by reversing the process. Electric current creates magnetic fields. Those fields push on other currents or magnets, producing motion. Electrical energy becomes mechanical energy. Generators turn motion into electricity. Motors turn electricity into motion. The physics is identical. Everything from fans to elevators to factories depends on this symmetry. Now zoom out. Every technology that defines modern life relies on controlled electromagnetic interactions. Radio waves are electromagnetic waves. Wi-Fi is electromagnetic radiation. Light itself is an oscillating electromagnetic field. When you see, you are detecting electromagnetic vibrations. When you hear, mechanical vibrations are converted into electrical signals in your inner ear. When you communicate across the planet, information rides on electromagnetic waves moving through space. Even computation is electrical at its core. Inside a computer, billions of tiny switches control the movement of electrons. Logic itself is implemented through electric fields guiding charges along carefully designed pathways. Information is physical, and its physical form is electrical. This leads to a profound realization. What you experience as the solid mechanical world is an emergent illusion. At the fundamental level, reality is fields and forces, not gears and levers, not contact and pressure, but invisible influences acting across space. You do not push a door because your hand touches it. You push a door because electromagnetic fields resist compression. You stand on the ground because electromagnetic repulsion prevents your atoms from passing through the atoms beneath you. Even the concept of hardness is electrical. The electromagnetic force is not explained by anything deeper in classical terms. It is fundamental. You cannot reduce it to springs or particles or collisions, because springs and collisions are themselves electromagnetic effects. At some level, physics stops explaining and starts describing. This force exists. It behaves this way. Everything else follows. That idea is uncomfortable because it violates everyday intuition. Humans evolved to navigate a world of surfaces and contact. We did not evolve to perceive fields. But fields are the truth. The universe is filled with them. Electric fields, magnetic fields, gravitational fields, quantum fields. Space itself is not empty. It is structured. Electricity is one of the few cases where humans learn not just to observe a field, but to command it. When you flip a switch, you are not releasing stored energy in the wire. You are reconfiguring a field that extends across miles. You are participating in a coordinated electromagnetic event that spans generators, transformers, transmission lines, appliances, and sensors, all synchronized, all governed by the same equations. 200 years ago, none of this existed. Humans lived by fire, muscle, and wind. Then we learned how to move electrons intentionally. And everything changed. Cities glowed at night. Communication became instantaneous. Machines replaced physical labor. Information moved faster than any human could travel. Electricity did not just improve civilization. It rewrote what civilization could be. And it did so by exploiting a truth about reality that is still deeply unintuitive. That forces can act across empty space, that fields are real, and that matter itself is mostly an organized response to those fields. So what is electricity really? It is not a thing you can hold. It is not a fluid. It is not energy in isolation. Electricity is a name we give to the controlled manipulation of the electromagnetic force. It is proof that the world is not what it seems. It shows us that solidity is an illusion, that contact is a myth, and that the deepest structure of reality is invisible but precise. When you turn on a light, you are not just illuminating a room. You are commanding one of the fundamental forces of the universe. You are participating in a chain of cause and effect that begins with spinning matter and ends with photons striking your eyes. You are bending fields to your will. And the most astonishing part is not that this is possible. It's that humans figured it out. That is the real story of electricity, not convenience, not comfort, understanding. If all of this feels unsettling, that's because it should. Electricity forces you to confront a truth that everyday life works very hard to hide. The world does not operate the way your instincts tell you it does. It only feels solid, mechanical, and direct because the underlying forces are balanced so perfectly that you never notice them. But balance is not the same thing as absence. Everywhere you look, electromagnetic forces are pulling, pushing, resisting, and stabilizing. They are doing so silently, invisibly, and relentlessly. The moment that balance shifts, even slightly, reality reminds you what it's really made of. Think about lightning again. In a thunderstorm, trillions upon trillions of electrons slowly separate inside massive clouds. Positive charge builds up in one region, negative charge in another. For a while, the imbalance is held in place by the air itself. Air acts as an insulator. It resists the flow of electrons. But the electromagnetic force does not weaken. The imbalance grows. The electric field becomes more intense. Eventually, the air can no longer hold it back. Electrons tear through the sky in a violent cascade, jumping kilometers in a fraction of a second. Lightning is not chaos. It is order snapping back into balance. The same thing happens on a smaller scale every time you touch a metal object after walking across carpet. The same thing happens inside every battery. The same thing happens inside every power line, every circuit board, every neuron in your brain. Electricity is imbalance trying to resolve itself. A battery, at its core, is not a source of electricity. It is a device that maintains separation. Chemical reactions inside the battery force electrons to one side and leave a deficit on the other. That separation creates an electric field. The moment you connect a circuit, electrons move. Not because they want to, but because the field demands it. Voltage is not energy. Voltage is pressure. Electrical pressure created by imbalance. Current is not energy either. Current is movement. The flow of charge responding to that pressure. Energy is transferred when fields push charges through resistance. This distinction matters because it reveals something profound. Electricity is not stored in wires. Wires do not contain energy the way a tank contains water. Wires guide fields. They shape how forces propagate. They constrain how electrons respond. The energy lives in the field. That sounds abstract, but it has real consequences. In high-speed circuits, energy can arrive at a component before electrons physically get there. In transmission lines, power flows through the space around the conductor, not inside the metal itself. In antennas, electrons barely move at all, yet energy radiates outward at light speed. Electricity is fundamentally non-local. Effects here are tied to causes there through invisible structures that span space. This idea becomes unavoidable when you look at alternating current, the kind of electricity that powers homes and cities. In AC systems, electrons do not travel from the power plant to your house. They oscillate back and forth, barely drifting at all. What moves across the grid is not matter, but pattern, a rhythm imposed on electric and magnetic fields. The grid is not a river. It is a synchronized dance. Millions of generators spin in precise coordination. Their fields rise and fall together. The timing matters. The phase matters. The entire system behaves like a single continent-sized machine oscillating 60 times per second. That coordination is fragile. Lose it, and systems collapse. Blackouts are not caused by a lack of electrons. They are caused by a breakdown in synchronization. Electricity demands order. This brings us to one of the strangest facts of all. Electromagnetic forces are conservative. They do not create energy. They only move it. Every joule delivered to your home came from mechanical motion somewhere else. Spinning turbines, falling water, expanding steam. Electricity is a messenger. It carries instructions. It carries timing. It carries force. But it does not create power from nothing. It translates motion into fields and fields into motion. That translation is what allowed humans to escape the limits of muscle and geography. Before electricity, power had to be used where it was generated. Water wheel powered nearby machinery. A fire heated nearby objects. Distance mattered. Electricity broke that constraint. It allowed power to be generated in one place and used somewhere else, almost instantly. It allowed coordination across cities, nations, and eventually the planet. The moment humans learned to control electromagnetic fields, distance lost much of its meaning. Communication followed the same pattern. The telegraph was not just faster mail. It was a new category of interaction, information detached from physical transport. A pattern in an electric field could represent a thought, a decision, a warning, a command. That realization changed everything. Once information could ride on electricity, it could be copied, amplified, redirected, and processed. Radio extended this into space itself. No wires. Just fields oscillating through the air, carrying meaning encoded in their structure. Television, radar, satellite communication, wireless networks. All of it rests on the same foundation. Electromagnetic waves propagating through space, guided by nothing but the laws of physics. Light itself is part of this spectrum. The only difference between radio waves and visible light is frequency. Same phenomenon, same fields. When you see, you are not receiving particles of matter. You are intercepting oscillations in an electromagnetic field that have traveled through space and time to reach you. Your eyes are antennas. Your brain is a signal processor. At this point, the boundary between electricity and reality begins to dissolve. You realize that electricity is not a special category of phenomenon. It is a visible manifestation of the deeper structure of the universe. Everything that feels solid is stabilized by electromagnetic forces. Everything that feels dynamic is driven by them. Everything that feels alive depends on their controlled flow. Even chemistry, which seems separate, is nothing more than electrons rearranging themselves under electromagnetic rules. Bonds form because fields favor certain configurations. Reactions happen because energy pushes systems from one balance point to another. Heat is not a substance. It is motion constrained by electromagnetic forces. Temperature measures how violently particles vibrate within the cages formed by their fields. Biology does not escape this framework. Proteins fold because of charge distributions. DNA replicates because of electromagnetic attraction and repulsion. Cells communicate through electric potentials across membranes. Life is an electrical phenomenon built on chemistry. And consciousness, whatever else it may be, is inseparable from electrical activity. Neurons fire when voltage thresholds are crossed. Signals propagate as waves of ion exchange. Thought emerges from patterns of electric activity coordinated across billions of cells. You are not a machine powered by electricity. You are electricity organized. This is why understanding electricity feels like peeking behind the curtain. It exposes the scaffolding beneath experience. It reveals that the world you interact with is not made of solid stuff colliding in space, but of fields negotiating equilibrium. Once you see that, it becomes impossible to unsee. A chair is not hard. It is resistant. A wall is not solid. It is balanced. A floor does not hold you up. It pushes back. Reality is not passive. It is active, responsive, and structured by invisible rules. Electricity is one of the few places where humans interact with those rules directly, where we intentionally shape fields and force matter to comply. That is why it feels like power, because it is. Not power in the metaphorical sense. Power in the literal sense of commanding forces that operate at the deepest level of physical law. And the deeper you go, the more unsettling it becomes. Because electromagnetism is not the end of the story. It points toward something even more fundamental. A universe where fields are primary and particles are secondary, where space itself is dynamic, and where what we call things are stable patterns in an underlying sea of interaction. Electricity is not just a technology. It is a clue. At this point, electricity stops feeling like a tool and starts feeling like a message from reality itself. Because the deeper you look, the more it forces you to confront a strange idea. What you experience as cause and effect is not as simple as you think. You flip a switch. The light turns on. It feels instantaneous. Your intuition says the cause happened first and the effect followed immediately. But in the physical world, nothing truly happens instantly. Even electromagnetic effects are limited by the speed of light. So why does it feel instant? Because the delays are hidden from human perception. When you close a circuit, an electromagnetic disturbance begins to propagate through space and through the materials around the wire. That disturbance travels at a significant fraction of light speed, fast enough that on human timescales and household distances, it feels immediate. But it is not magic. It is not action without delay. It is simply faster than your senses can resolve. This distinction matters because it shows that electricity is not a violation of causality. It obeys the same universal speed limits as everything else. The reason it feels different is because fields behave differently than objects. Objects move through space. Fields rearrange themselves across space. That difference is subtle, but profound. An object must be carried from one place to another. A field, by contrast, already exists everywhere. When conditions change, the field configuration updates locally, and that change spreads outward. Nothing has to travel the entire distance. The structure is already there. This is why electricity feels non-local, even though it is not. The wire is not waiting for electrons from far away. The electrons are already present, already interacting, already linked through repulsion and attraction. You are not sending matter across space. You are changing constraints. Think of it less like pushing a cart and more like tightening a rope that is already stretched across the room. The tension changes everywhere at once, limited only by how fast information can propagate through the rope itself. Electric fields are the tension. Magnetic fields are the twist, and space is the medium. Once you accept this, the relationship between electricity and magnetism becomes even stranger. According to relativity, electric and magnetic fields are not separate entities at all. They are different perspectives on the same underlying field. What looks like an electric field in one frame of reference can look like a magnetic field in another. Magnetism, in a very real sense, is electricity seen from a moving point of view. This is not philosophical speculation. It is a measurable fact. If you move alongside an electric current, the balance of forces you observe changes. Charges that appeared neutral now appear shifted. Forces that looked magnetic transform into electric forces and back again. The universe does not distinguish sharply between electric and magnetic phenomena. We do, because we move slowly compared to light. At high speeds, the separation dissolves. This tells you something crucial. Electricity is woven into the structure of space and time themselves. It is not just a force acting within the universe. It is part of how the universe is organized. That realization forces another uncomfortable conclusion. If electromagnetic fields permeate all of space, then empty space is not empty at all. It is active, structured, capable of storing energy and momentum, capable of exerting pressure. The vacuum is not nothing. When electromagnetic waves travel through space, nothing material is moving from one place to another. No particles need to carry the wave. The field oscillates, and space itself participates in that oscillation. This is why light can travel through a vacuum. There is no medium in the classical sense. The field is the medium. Electricity reveals that space is not just a stage on which physics happens. Space is part of the physics. This perspective also explains why electricity can feel so alien when you try to describe it using everyday language. Words like flow, current, and pressure are metaphors borrowed from fluids and mechanics. They are useful, but they are lies of convenience. Electricity does not flow like water. It does not push like a piston. It does not move like a solid object. It behaves like a rule enforced everywhere at once, locally constrained, globally consistent. This is why large electrical systems behave more like living organisms than machines. Power grids oscillate. They stabilize themselves. They can fall into resonance. They can become unstable if feedback loops grow too strong. Engineers do not merely design circuits. They manage behaviors. A poorly designed system does not fail because electrons get lost. It fails because fields reinforce themselves in destructive ways. Oscillations grow. Phases drift. Energy piles up where it cannot dissipate. Electricity punishes ignorance of its deeper nature. This is also why miniaturization eventually runs into limits. As circuits become smaller and faster, the field effects dominate. Delays matter. Crosstalk appears. Signals interfere. The clean separation between components disappears. At very small scales, electrons no longer behave like tiny billiard balls at all. Quantum effects take over. Probability replaces certainty. Fields fluctuate even in their lowest energy state. At that scale, electricity emerges with quantum mechanics, and the story becomes even stranger. Electrons are not little charged spheres orbiting nuclei like planets. They are excitations of a quantum field. They do not have precise positions until they are forced to interact. Their charge is not smeared through space, but neither is it localized in a classical sense. Electricity still works. The equations still predict behavior with astonishing accuracy. But the mental pictures break down. The universe does not owe you intuition. What remains consistent is this: patterns propagate, constraints enforce behavior, fields respond to change. Electricity is not about stuff moving. It is about relationships changing. That insight reframes how you think about control. When humans learned to harness electricity, they did not gain power by grabbing hold of particles and dragging them around. They gained power by shaping environments so that particles had no choice but to behave in certain ways. We do not command electrons. We persuade them. We build pathways of least resistance. We raise and lower potentials. We allow certain motions and forbid others. The system responds because the laws of physics leave it no alternative. Electricity is cooperation with nature, not domination over it. And that is why it is so reliable. When you flip a switch, you are not forcing reality to comply through brute strength. You are aligning with how reality already wants to behave. Imbalance resolves. Fields relax. Energy moves downhill. The universe does the work. This realization also explains why electricity is dangerous, not because it is malicious, but because it is indifferent. The same forces that gently light a bulb can tear apart cells, disrupt heart rhythms, and vaporize metal if misapplied. Electricity does not care what you intend. It only responds to conditions. Create the wrong imbalance, and the universe responds accordingly. Seen this way, electricity is not just a utility. It is a lesson. It teaches that the deepest powers available to humans come not from strength, but from understanding. from learning the rules well enough to work with them instead of against them. And it hints at something even deeper. If fields are fundamental and particles are secondary, then what you call objects are not truly things at all. They are stable patterns, persistent arrangements of relationships, temporary solutions to underlying equations. Electricity makes it visible because it allows patterns to move independently of matter. Signal can travel without mass. Information can propagate without substance. Meaning itself becomes physical. Once you see that, the boundary between physics and philosophy starts to blur. Questions about causation, agency, and reality itself are no longer abstract. They are embedded in the way fields behave. Electricity does not just power civilization. It exposes the scaffolding of existence. And once you recognize that, the final illusions will fall away. The idea that humans are separate from the forces they use. You're not outside the system manipulating from a distance. You're a part of it. Your thoughts are electrical. Your actions are electrical. Your understanding is electrical. Electricity is not something you use. It is something you are made of. At the end of all this, the strangest realization is not about electricity itself. It's about you. Because once you strip away the metaphors, once you stop pretending the world is made of solid things bumping into each other, you're left with a universe that behaves less like a machine and more like a conversation. Forces respond. Fields adjust. Systems negotiate balance. Electricity only feels like magic because it exposes how wrong our instincts are. Humans evolved in a narrow slice of reality. A world of slow motion, solid surfaces, and direct contact. A world where objects feel firm and causes feel local. That intuition works well enough to survive, but it fails completely at explaining what's actually happening underneath. Electricity shatters that illusion. It shows you that action at a distance is not an exception. It is the rule. It shows you that touch is not real in the way you think it is. It shows you that space itself is active, responsive, and structured. And once you accept that, something clicks into place. The universe stops feeling mechanical and starts feeling relational. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is defined by how it interacts. An electron is not just a particle with charge. It is a node in a web of forces extending infinitely outward. A wire is not a conduit. It is a boundary that shapes how fields behave. A circuit is not a loop of metal. It is a controlled imbalance stretched across space. Electricity works because the universe allows it to work, because the laws of nature are consistent, precise, and exploitable by intelligence. That last part matters. Electricity is not just a discovery. It is evidence. Evidence that the universe is intelligible, that deep, invisible rules exist and can be understood, that reality is not chaos, but structure hidden beneath appearance. When humans learned to harness electricity, they didn't just gain light, heat, and motion. They gained confidence that the universe could be decoded. That reason could reach into the invisible and pull something useful out. Every wire in a wall is a monument to that belief. Every generator is proof that understanding beats strength. And every circuit is a reminder that the most powerful forces are not the ones you can see, but the ones you can align with. This is why electricity transformed civilization faster than almost any other discovery. Not just because it made life easier, but because it rewired how humans thought about power itself. Power was no longer muscle. It was no longer proximity. It was no longer ownership of fuel. Power became control of patterns. Once information could move independently of matter, once energy could be guided rather than carried, the limits of distance, time, and scale collapsed. Societies reorganized. Economies reshaped themselves. Human coordination reached levels never before possible. All of it built on the same invisible foundation, electromagnetic fields obeying simple rules with absolute consistency. And yet, despite how much we rely on it, electricity remains mostly unseen and misunderstood. We treat it like a convenience, a utility, a background feature of life, something that should always be there, unnoticed. But it deserves more respect than that, because electricity is not just what powers your world. It explains your world. It explains why matter holds together, why chemistry works, why light travels, why life can exist. It explains why your body feels solid and why your thoughts can move without mass. It explains how something can influence something else without touching it, and why that influence doesn't violate reality but defines it. When you flip a switch, you are not commanding electrons in a wire. You are participating in a vast coordinated rearrangement of fields that begins with spinning matter somewhere far away and ends with a sensation in your brain. You're triggering a chain of events governed by equations written into the fabric of space and time. You're briefly becoming a causal agent in the deepest sense. That is not trivial. That is extraordinary. Electricity reminds us that the world is not made of things, but of relationships. That what matters most is not substance, but structure, not objects, but interactions. And it reminds us of something even more important. Humans are not outsiders in this universe. We are expressions of the same forces we harness. Our technology works because it mirrors the logic of reality itself. Our intelligence is effective because it evolved inside a universe governed by rules that can be learned. Electricity is not proof of human dominance over nature. It is proof of human participation in it. So the next time you see a light turn on or a screen glow or a machine move, remember what is really happening. Invisible fields are shifting. Charges are responding. Space itself is participating. And for a brief moment, the hidden structure of reality is doing exactly what you asked it to do. That is what electricity really is. Not a substance, not a service, not a convenience. A window into how the universe actually works. And proof that understanding it is one of humanity's greatest achievements, truth.